Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be using a stamp set from Waffle Flower. This is from their latest release that just came out on Saturday. This is the Always stamp set, and I actually filmed this when I was out of town, so that's why it looks a little bit different. It just had straight overhead lighting. You can see the light reflected in my MISTI door here, and but I did have my camera with me, or my cell phone, so I decided to film my process while I created this card, and I hope you guys enjoy it, even if it does look a little bit different than my usual setup. So like I said before, I'm using this stamp set from Waffle Flower. I'm using most of the imagery stamps that are in the set. I did not use any of the leaf stamps, but I did do the 3 flowers that are included in the stamp set, as well as the main image of the girl holding the bird. So I'm going to be doing some no-line coloring with watercolors today, or rather with distress inks. So I used the Inkon3 Fade Out ink. And I did want to talk about this ink a little bit in this video because a couple weeks ago I used the blackout ink for some coloring, and I had really good results with it. And I wanted to give you my opinion on this particular ink when it comes to watercoloring. I know this ink, a lot of people have used it for Copic coloring because it is Copic friendly and also waterproof. So I thought I would touch on the waterproof aspect of this ink. So the paper that I'm using today is some Arches cold press paper. But before I started on the Arches, I actually tried this on some hot press paper from Fabriano. And I didn't have very good results. And I wish I still had the paper to show you as an example, but I must have packed it away or I can't find it. But I actually spoke with some other people who had tried it, this particular ink with no-line watercoloring, and had similar results. I don't know if you can tell, but as I'm painting, the lines that are stamped become kind of fuzzy and jagged. And you can see it on this example here, but when I did it on the hot press paper, it was even more apparent. It was so apparent to the point that I stopped my project and started over. So it was not a good result in my experience. Moving to cold press paper, it was a little bit less noticeable, I guess. It was a little bit less noticeable just because of the texture of the paper. The paper sort of disguised that kind of jagged edge because the paper's textured anyway, so it would sort of have that jagged edge. So, but I also want to preface this that I was using distress inks, and I did test the Fade Out ink on the hot press paper with regular watercolors, and I didn't have as much of a jagged edge. So I think the distress inks, whatever's in them, reacts with the Fade Out ink and makes the ink kind of bleed a little bit, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's exactly what's happening, but it seemed to be like that. So I would say if you're going to be doing no-line coloring with this Fade Out ink from Inkon3 and you're on hot press watercolor paper, you're better off using traditional watercolors versus distress inks or something like like a stamping ink that you smush onto a slick surface. I can't say for sure if that's how it is because I need to do even further testing. But for me personally, I think for no-line watercoloring, especially on hot press watercolor paper, I'm going to stick with using my Distress Antique Linen ink because that line really, because the ink is not waterproof, it reacts with water, and it's such a light ink, it sort of gets absorbed by the color you put next to it. Because of that, it truly is a no-line look. It completely fades into the background as you're painting, and I think that's the look that you want when you're going for no-line watercoloring. Now for this image with all of the detail on her hair, I didn't mind having the lines there and having a little bit more definition because it really helped me as I was painting, and having those lines there gave it some boundaries on each shape, and it gave me a little bit more to work with. So in this case, I didn't mind it too much. But as you can see on the flowers, like that pale blue, you can still see the lines quite a bit. I am going to darken those up a little bit, and hopefully that the lines will disappear. But I wasn't that impressed with this Inkon3 Fade Out ink. And I hate to even say that because I think for Copics it would be a fantastic ink. I'm going to do some testing with Copics as well coming up here in a bit. But for watercoloring, I don't think this is quite the best ink for me personally. Now, others might have a bit different experience. They might love it. But just me testing it here a few times, I wasn't overwhelmed enough to have it take over as my go-to ink for no-line watercoloring. So take that for what it's worth. I just want to give you guys my opinion. It's a great ink otherwise. I think for Copics it would be fantastic, especially since there aren't very many inks out there that are very, very pale like this that work well with Copics. I know, same as the stamp has one called Barely Beige that's fantastic for Copic coloring. And this is sort of a similar idea where it's a very kind of washed out pale tan color. So I think it would work well with that. Okay, so here's something I want to mention as I'm coming in here. There's this area right below the bird that I thought was her hair, but apparently it's not her hair. It's actually the belly of the bird. And I had no idea. It looked like it could have been her hair or it could have been the bird. I wasn't sure. And I painted it, and you're going to see me paint it brown here in a minute. And then I looked at the stamp set, and there's a second bird that you can stamp separately in the stamp set. And it's the exact same bird that the girl is holding. So I think the idea is that you could stamp it, die cut it, and place it on top so there's some dimension with the bird on top of the girl. But that belly area is the bird. It's not her hair. And I even thought about like stamping it again and coloring it and then cutting it out and placing it over the top of this painting. But in the end, I decided to just leave it, like whatever, not a huge deal. But now that I know that that is actually part of the bird, that's all I can see when I look at this painting. And it's probably all you're going to be able to see too when you're looking at this from now on. It's just funny how that works. But I'm mentioning it because I don't want 5 million people in the comments saying, you painted the bird wrong, you know? And now that I've said that, you're all gonna put that in the comments. I know it. But I just want to mention it, that I do realize that that was part of the bird and not her hair. Anyway, so I did all this no-line covering with distress inks, like I said before, and I just used a piece of packaging because I was traveling and didn't have my usual palette with me. So I used like the back sheet of the stamp set, just smush all of those ink pads down onto the plastic and then pick it up with my aqua painter. And I also didn't put any water in the aqua painter or in that Aquash brush. I was using it like a regular brush. So I'm going to take the dies that come with this set and I'm going to put those down and just use a little bit of washi tape to hold those in place. I was out of town, but I was at a crafting retreat. So thankfully there were some die cutting machines there. So I was able to use the die cutting machine. And when I die cut these out, I make sure that I tape not directly over the image, mostly just holding the die to the paper. So I've got all those pieces there. I'm going to adhere those to the back of her. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and do some background painting for the front of the card. I've got some more Arches cold press watercolor paper, and I'm going to put down some water to make sure this whole surface is completely wet. And a big thanks to my friend Shari for letting me use her brush, and my friend Tiffany for letting me use her washi tape, and also my friend Susan for letting me borrow some watercolor paper. I was really kind of borrowing a lot from my friends that were at this crafting retreat, but it was fun. It was nice to have all of those ladies around while I was crafting. So I used some different colors from Distress Inks, and then I didn't have my regular adhesive. I used some red sticky tape, or some red line tape, and I put that down onto my card base, which was made out of some Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And then I was kind of placing my painting on there to get the positioning just right. And I'm going to do a stamp for the greeting. So this Love You stamp from the stamp set, I've just used some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I stamped that kind of in the lower right corner. Then I put a bunch of foam adhesive, also courtesy of Shari, on the back of my piece here, and then directly onto the card front. And that finishes the card for today. In total, I think I was working on this card for nearly 2 hours. About an hour and a half of that was painting, and then the other half hour was kind of like assembly and stamping and things like that. I always tend to take a little bit longer when I'm crafting with friends. I think it's because I stop and talk. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you'll be back very soon with another video. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.